Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever you're joining. Every big business started small. Look around you, and if you've got cybersecurity professionals in your circle, many of them will probably talk to you about the organization that they work with. And many, many more will talk to you about their own individual enterprises that they're running, whether as a consultant as a consultancy, whether as an independent contractor. The reality of the matter is that as a cybersecurity professional, whether you're a fresh graduate, whether you have 10 to 15 years worth of experience behind your name, you've got a price in the marketplace. A price being the key word there. Anyone with some form of skill sets can set up some sort of an organization, an independent body, and offer services of some sorts and put a price to it. But how do you know the value of what it is that you're offering? How do you differ yourself as an independent cybersecurity expert, as an independent contractor? My session that is about to begin is with Netmechanics, with an individual who is not only a good friend, is someone that I have subscribed to whenever I've had questions about very particular areas of cybersecurity. Today, though, for the first time, I'm going to be talking to him in relation to the Careerxpo about how, as an individual, he's built his practice. From not only servicing small to medium businesses, but to also looking at how he can be a part of wider communities of individuals like himself. It's quite different when you're working for a firm and you're working for yourself. You can start working for yourself today. How do you identify the value? How do you position yourself in the marketplace? How do you build partnerships around that? My guest today is Graeme Barrie, as I like to always call him, the man, Mr. Barrie. Mr. Barrie has tons of experience behind him, has a numerous number of certifications that support and accredit everything that he does. He's the master of cool backgrounds, rocks a pretty awesome beard, and is a good individual to build a relationship with. He's going to be talking to you on a variety of fronts, where you can find your next position in cybersecurity, but also how you can get started on your own today. Always remember this, even the strongest of companies, the most well-known companies, can be caught from a cybersecurity perspective if they don't understand their weaknesses. Graeme's going to help you understand some of our weaknesses so that we can all begin to play our part in the world of cybersecurity. Graeme, thank you for joining us at the Careerxpo. My first question to you is this. What was that moment in your career when you said, it's time for me to set up my own practice, Netmechanics?
Well, first off, thanks for having me, and thanks for that great introduction. It was easy for me because my wife had a job offer, so we relocated from rural Ontario to a more urban, we'll call it, if you want to call Lindsay and the Kawartha Lakes urban. More urban than we were used to. So it was, I fell into it essentially at that point. I was doing more of a VCIO type role on my own and helping businesses put strategy behind their IT, but my background's always been security. So when we moved here, I kind of took a step back and thought, security's always been my passion. So there's a definite gap in delivery to small and medium business. So that's kind of where how it came about.
Okay. And of course, as a matter of circumstance, you had to move geographically and you found yourself saying, hey, I can render my services to multiple firms through my own individual incorporation. And this is an important point. People often tend to forget this. When we talk about people, process, and technology, there's a third P there, and that's place. Depending on where you are situated geographically, your voice, your position, your expertise is taken differently. One of the things that I always like to tell my students, especially new graduates, but especially those who are in the field themselves, is you need to explore Ontario beyond just the GTA alone. In Durham region, for example, having the only Center for Cybersecurity Innovation for Durham College makes us one of the strongest voices. But in places where there are a lot of experts, you've got to find your voice a little differently. Graham, what was it like when you moved to a new community to start talking to local businesses about cybersecurity?
Yeah, being the new kid on the block, so to speak. Yeah, I'm the most outspoken introvert you'll ever meet. I don't go out of my way to talk to people. So, moving here, I realized, I've really got to pound the pavement and start making some relationships and meeting people. So, I got in touch with the local ECDev, Kawartha Lakes, and then that put me in touch with the innovation cluster out of Peterborough. So that kind of put me in a place of working with other startups and small businesses that were growing. So it kind of I fell into a community, so to speak,
Yeah.
and then that broadened my my reach within the community.
I think that's another very important point is that we don't just happen to fall into situations by chance. There tends to be some sort of a method to that madness of our experiences. The key is to make sure that you're not just listening to someone just because you want to be physically there, but you're listening to understand. One of the practices, Graham, that I've noticed that over the last 2 years, as you've built Netmechanics, is you've built a process or a practice to yourself, which is if you go to conferences, you're often seen taking notes, you're often seen tweeting about things, you're often seen engaging in different formats. As you mentioned, cybersecurity practitioners typically tend to stay in their silo. What are some tips that you can give to our listeners about how do you break that silo that we often operate within?
Well, as you start working for yourself, you realize, you have to be vocal. If you're sitting in the corner, people aren't going to reach out to you. You've got to make yourself known. Um, but the flip side to that also is you need to be a good listener, especially in cybersecurity. So you need to listen to what people's problems are, but then be able to respond and have that vocal reach as well.
But often the case is that in the work that we do, especially when you've been focusing on small to medium businesses, many of them, and this is not to speak disparagingly of them, many of them may not even know what some of their problems are. So when you find yourself, the typical engagement might be, hey, I'm doing a lot of online payment processing. How do I know I'm secure? That's typically how most of your conversations may start. You've perfected this art of how do I explain to somebody who knows nothing about a 0 day attack, for example, or a zero trust model, you translate that for them in very simple, relatable terms. Talk to us about how you've been doing that and how companies have been taking advantage of it.
Yeah, so with my background being enterprise IT and so many years in municipal government, having to explain IT to business
No.
units and politicians, um, I you learn that ability to be able to translate complex terms and terminology into easy to understand and relatable terms. So with business owners, we need to speak in business lingo, translate it into an understanding that this costs them money, or this could save them money, or this could give them competitive advantage. Um, so yeah, so it does start with that conversation of I know I'm at risk, but I don't know how I'm at risk. And in one particular engagement I had was with a food processing company, and the CEO, it was a family-run business, and he said, "Look, I know I'm at risk. I don't know anything about IT. Can you help us out?" And I sat down with himself and their newly hired president, and they said, "We're not techies. We don't get this." And by the end of me doing the assessment and walking through things with them and ultimately preparing the report for them, they said, you put this into plain English that we understand and made it common sense, so we know now that it's a business risk, it's not a technology risk.
Understood.
And that's what I like to see, that's what I strive for, and to have those conversations so they do understand that this, it is technical in nature, but it is a business risk, and then that's how they start to understand it.
Yep. Now, it's very sort of understandable when you map out this journey where they reached out to you and you offered a service and you walk them through. You have certain terms of engagement. That's great. But the world of cybersecurity, no person is an island, and you've always been a proponent of this idea of you don't build a business, you build people, and then the people around you build that business. How have you built community around your work? You've mentioned that you were doing some work with the Center for Cybersecurity Innovation around building an online application, which allows you to build community. What have you been doing to bring people around you and get them to talk to one another as well?
Well, it's I started working with other colleagues who I've met actually through the center in Durham College. So that's bringing in some professional partnerships and collaboration, and the whole idea of building the software platform is to start to build collaboration within organizations, within companies, but then also within broader organizations such as chambers of commerce or business associations like manufacturing associations, so they can start working together collaboratively to share resources, or in the case of my platform, to be able to compete against one another
Yep.
in raising their own security practices within.
Absolutely. And I want our audience to pay attention to this, right? I said this in a couple of previous sessions where, Marshall McLuhan, right? The medium is the message. We know that you want to train people. If you are going to go down this path of being an independent consultant, we know you want to train people. You know you want to assist organizations with their cybersecurity posture, but you need to know how to address that communication gap, and you need to know how to present the information where it's relatable. I can almost assure you that when Graeme went into the food processing company and spotted the same issue, let's say hypothetically it was related to their PCI DSS compliance, the same issue that he may have spotted in, let's say, I don't know, an auto parts manufacturing company, he would have explained it and described it completely differently. Same message, the medium being different, which is where I really want to take you to Graeme's approach now towards training and awareness programming. Not with the idea of, hey, we want to sell you training, but with the idea of how does he approach training and awareness programming. Graeme, you are certified in different skill sets. You've got numerous accreditations to your name. You also are a certified trainer. How does your training approach differ? Do you incorporate some of your applications? Do you gamify it? Talk to us a little bit about that process.
Yeah, so the application, the platform that's being built is gamified.
Yep.
So there is the competitive engagement for employees to kind of spur each other on.
Yep.
The other piece of that is the platform's going to have home access, so you'll be able to take it home essentially, and your family can use it. So you're starting to build security practices at home with things you understand, like your Alexa or your Google or your Nest and things like that. So you're starting to build these habits of security and then bringing them back into the workplace. And when I'm doing workshops in person, which I haven't done in quite a few months because
Yeah.
of the pandemic, um, I use a lot of anecdotal examples of um, hacks that I've performed, or colleagues I've worked with for years, and hacks that they've performed. And I've done training with the RCMP, so then we took over the facility we were training in, and so I add these little anecdotal stories to kind of drive home the fact that this is real life. This just isn't happening in the headlines. It's happening to businesses everywhere.
Absolutely. And I really want to go focus on the realness of it. I really want to be real. And you've mentioned this word real life quite a lot. Part of your work, and we'll come back to the training elements and the gamification of it and talk some more, because there's certainly a lot of opportunities where not only you can get businesses to use the application, but you may be even looking for people who are game masters that you can hire. The world of cybersecurity is opening up very new, and dare I say, even some unthought of roles before, And those are all becoming a part of it because there's a production element to everything that we do and how we engage people. So we'll come to that,
Mhm.
but the realness of it. And one of the things that you do also as a consultant or as an independent contractor to multiple firms is you don't just tell them about, hey, use Sonar instead of that, or use this API for your security assessments instead of that. You also go in and assess the people place. You go and consult around items such as insider threats being one of the things, or what are the realities, or how to conduct themselves when people leave the organization and what they need to follow. Are you finding that now those who are the companies that are engaging you, it's not just the IT folks, but now you've got the HR person that wants to talk and the CMO that wants to talk? Is that what you're experiencing on the field?
Yeah, and it also helps that I focus more on the human side, so I kind of drive the conversation that way because it's an often overlooked
Yeah.
piece with companies because they automatically look at the technology, and I start to educate them that your people are your biggest asset, but they can also be your biggest risk. So let's start there, and then we'll merge into the technology, and let's look at the insider threats and when people leave the business. I walk into organizations and perform an assessment, and there could be user accounts that are still active from somebody that was there 2 years ago, and
Yeah.
it's an oversight on their part. So then you have to have that conversation with HR and say, yeah, you need to tighten your policies and procedures around your hiring and firing and promotion and what have you, and how that dovetails into security.
And I think what's even further more to that is that not only are you talking about the human side of it, you're reminding them is that what's going to happen tomorrow really depends on what you do today. And the reality of the matter is, and this is a question that's come is of course, COVID 19, which has been a persistent topic in today's Careerxpo, has reshaped the market in a tremendous way. Have you, as a practitioner in this space, was pandemic planning and disaster planning from a pandemic perspective ever a part of your toolkit when you were engaging in helping companies with their posture?
A little bit, not to the not to
Not to the
the
extent we're in now, no.
not to the extent we're in now. And and in a previous life I was in emergency management and pandemic planning and stuff like that, but I didn't bring that with me. But now I'm using it more and more. Training that I took years ago,
Right.
it's now it's become a transferable um, asset, so to speak. So yeah, it is. The initial conversations didn't go there. There was more the business continuity and disaster recovery from other aspects, but now, yeah, the conversations is turning more to pandemic planning.
And that conversation ultimately leads into the type of awareness programming that you're running. It's not just about, especially for those who are listening and are aspiring to go into this space of, we want to provide our own independent services. A lot of fresh graduates can go down that path as well. It really comes down to what the value proposition is. And remember at the start of the conversation, I differentiated between price and value. If you listen to Danny Pahar and the Power Hour I did with him, when he was differentiating between price and value, he spoke about the idea that people know the price of everything, but the value of nothing. Value is really about that one or two items that you bring to the table that differ you from the crowd. Whether it's the level of responsiveness, whether it's your level of commitment, you need to be able to demonstrate that value at all time. Graham, for yourself, the value proposition, besides your communication skills, so on and so forth, you take a bit of a different approach to security and you take it piecemeal. You don't go in there and say, we're going to fix everything right away. The typical mechanical environment, a garage like space, Netmechanics. You bring the vehicle in, you isolate for what the problem is, fix it, and then slowly start to look at what else needs to be done. How do you position yourself from a costing perspective? How do you remain competitive there, Graham?
Uh, that's one thing I constantly struggle with, and I think other practitioners are the same. Is we talk to other practitioners in other jurisdictions, and the prices are quite a bit higher.
Yep.
And can I demand those prices? Probably not, in a lot of cases. So it really is a case of what what are your clients, what are they willing to pay? Um, but it also boils down to education and explaining to them that exact value proposition of, yeah, I'm coming in with over 20 years experience in various industries and whatnot. Um, here's here's what it costs,
Yeah.
to have that experience and that knowledge at your disposal, essentially. It you could be working in downtown Toronto and command a lot more um, than I
Absolutely.
can in outskirts.
And I think it's so important for all of those. And we'll shift into opportunities that you can have with Netmechanics. But for those of you who are listening, right, is as you've heard from Graham, is you got to build community around your work with the business community that you're going to work with. You need to know your value proposition, and you've heard Graham's, but you also need to know how you're going to price yourself in the marketplace and how you're going to justify that pricing in the marketplace. There are as many. I wouldn't say it's the same as with the number of realtors we have in Ontario, but from a cybersecurity skills perspective, there are many firms that are offering services. You need to know how to define your costing model. You need to know how to recover your costs, but also how you're going to render services. One of the common complaints you hear a lot from consultants is that they underprice, they overwork, and then at the end of the consulting agreement, you're pretty bitter about the experience because you put in this much, you probably got that much, and that's a skill in and of itself, and it's a decision, a business decision you have to make. You may not make money immediately in the first year. You've got to be prepared for those realities. It takes time to build a bit of a brand. But Graham, let's also go into how you have built community with other specialists in the space. I believe you're on a board as well for international VCSOs, and you've been very, some of them could be your competition, but you've built camaraderie across not just Canada, but across the globe. Why has those kind of volunteer initiatives been important to you?
Well, it's such a fast pace industry. It's moving so quickly. You can't do it yourself. You need that help. You need that the friendship, so to speak, and have that team behind you. And we're all at the virtual table with the virtual CISOs, and we're all sharing information freely because we all understand that we're all fighting the same fight. The cyber criminals are starting to band up and cartelize, however you want to pronounce it. So they're starting to build their own pricing models, and you know, us being reactionary, so to speak, we need to start doing the same thing. So the VCSO organization, that's what we're really trying to do is elevate the the industry and the profession, but also work together on our pricing models and our engagement models and our service delivery. So we're all singing from the same songbook.
Absolutely, and this aspect of I think that word that you use, the cartelize. I'm not sure. English is not my first language, Mr. Barry, but even if it's not a word, just as Google has become a word that we use all the time. Google it. This is a reality because when you look at the adversaries that you're dealing with, these are organized, and there's a method to that madness. There's creativity to that chaos, but there's also a level of control, and there's a level of communications that goes in place that all of our adversaries and dangerous actors use and mobilize with. I think one of the things that I don't know, I may have mentioned this in another session, where a group that typically issues ransomware had a statement on the dark web that said, "We know you've all been affected by the pandemic. Therefore, we're providing our services at 50% off for all those affected by us." And as hilarious as that is the reality. This is a business that you are contending with in the dark market. We've got about 20 more minutes. And I now want to, now that you've given some really good tips on how, if you want to get into the world of consulting, how you can do it, so on and so forth, I want to dive a little bit more into how does a firm like Netmechanics look for talent, and who are you hiring and what do you hire for? Can you talk to us a little bit about the per project kind of hiring that you do, and how do you build the database of resumes?
Yeah, so I'm just starting down this path now. So I have some engagements coming up where I'm reaching into the my black book, so to speak, of professionals in that respective field that I need to bring in. Um, but on from a hiring perspective, as I launch my platform, my software platform, you know, and that scales up, I am going to have to hire. So, in my business model, I'm going to be looking at um, security analysts to be able to do a lot of the legwork that I won't be able to do, so to speak. Um, Taking the model of like a law firm where they have the law clerks doing a lot of the work behind the scenes, and then the lawyer just does the finishing touches.
Absolutely.
Same sort of an idea, but also developers, but also trainers to be able to do that training of the communication, the translation of the technical to the business, and being the face for a lot of the training
Absolutely.
that'll be rolling out.
Yeah. And I
So
think that I do want to make that point further elucidated for our listeners. Many fresh graduates, many professionals who are listening right now, I do encourage you to reach out to Graham, because that process of also becoming a certified trainer, even though you may have, for example, a CEH certification, a certified ethical hacker, you still need to be accredited to be a trainer. There is a process that you have to go through. You've got to get validation from the EC Council for that matter. And this is where organizations like Netmechanics could help you to get that accreditation and then start doing trainings with them. This area of becoming expert trainers and leading trainings towards different certifications, so on and so forth, definitely is a market that a lot of folks in cybersecurity take on as a side gig. Some people have made it into their full-time engagement and profession, and it really hinges on the community that you build. So, what you've been hearing from Graham is the importance of community, the importance of creativity, the importance of having a good sense of your cyber skill set. But more importantly than that, you've got to have some level of control over what are the domains that you have expertise in. And it's very challenging right now to generalize. You've got to know where you excel. Someone like myself, and Graham can speak to his own, which he already has, I enjoy the communication side of it. I enjoy that aspect of engaging and bringing the teams together around an issue. What is it that you specifically excel at? Which is where I want to come back to, Graham, the platform that you're building. And you've looked at gamification models, you've looked at ways in which you can create competitive, friendly like environments for teams to learn about cybersecurity. Who are the kind of people that you're going to be hiring to run the games for you? Are there software developers that you're looking at? Are there game masters? What are you looking at there, Graham?
uh, primarily, it's going to be on the development side, but as things grow, then yeah, I'd definitely be looking at people to look at the game aspect. How to elevate the competitiveness and the so to speak the stickiness to keep people on it, um, to keep them engaged. Uh, I don't want to get to the point where it becomes the trainings or the new PowerPoint. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
people are bored with it. So it's going to be a constant evolution and refresh, and as new technologies come out to grab hold of those. So
Yeah.
um, I'm getting a little gray, so I'll need the younger audience to help drive that.
But I think this is another really important point that you've made forward, right? Is that when you are building security applications, so on and so forth, it is a collective effort. There are multiple skill sets that come to the table. One of the things that I talk about a great deal is last year when we held the Global Cyber Olympics competition in Durham region, or when we were about to conduct the collegiate penetration testing competition this weekend, closed doors, unfortunately. You would notice that a lot of the teams that are there will not have everybody from an IT or security background. Some players had a psychology major, some had a philosophy major, all different folks who think in different ways, who come at the solution from different environments. One of the things, though, that I will take from this is that games, esports, gamification are all factoring into real life scenarios of how we render and deliver value. Grim, why, from a gamification perspective, understanding that people are working remotely and we are by nature social and you want to improve that socialization, how do you ensure, or how does your platform ensure that gamification remains relevant? Do you incentivize people through a reward system? Are there prizes? How does that ecosystem work?
Yeah, right now it's a simple point system where there's a leaderboard for organizations, and then it's up to the organization to do the rewards. I'd love it to be at the point where we have a lot of industry partners where they could start offering incentives and prizes and whatnot to sweeten the pot, so to speak. Um, but that's the goal
Yeah.
eventually, for sure.
Absolutely, and to our audience again, right? Durham region and the surrounding areas has been a melting pot for all sorts of innovations in security. We have a virtual cybersecurity escape room, unfortunately closed because of COVID right now. We have tabletop exercises that have emerged from our community, like Breach the Keep. We have Graham's initiative that will be coming out more and more strongly as we build more partnerships in our community. The reality is that a lot of innovations in cybersecurity aren't just happening in the urban cores. They're happening in other areas, which is why one of the lessons that I really hope our audience takes is, if you are attending sessions, now of course virtually you can attend anywhere sitting at home, but if you are attending sessions when things do open up to some degree, look at going to meetups outside of your core. Look at going to these other areas. Often I've seen Graham travel, whether it's up to Ottawa, down to Niagara Falls, or up to Windsor, going in different areas and building community and followings around you. Graham, this has also been a particular skill set that you've shown very strongly in your community engagements, and that is the ability to keep in touch with your network. Do you do practices like newsletters, vlogs? You're doing this session today. How do you manage that? How do you plan your investments in that? What's your philosophy when it comes to market engagement?
It really, I look at it as I struggle with marketing because that's not my expertise. But I look at it as communication. It's just an offshoot of how I communicate with my customers or my potential clients, and that's communication is important. It's number one. If you're not communicating, someone else is going to communicate for you, and it may not be correct. If there's a gap, I teach this in a lot of organizations. If you're not preaching the culture of security, and there's gaps, then someone's going to fill that gap with misinformation, probably. So I try to do that with my regular communications out to clients, out to potential clients through social channels and whatnot. Um, but it's one of the things as an entrepreneur I've had to learn quickly, and I'm still learning. It's trial by fire.
Absolutely. One of the questions that's come in is around, and I'll reword it ever so slightly, is on this aspect of certifications that are available out there. And everybody, we had this conversation with the Career Foundation where they spoke really well about, the difference between having experience and just having credentials alone, and finding that balance between them, both from a financial perspective, but also from an operational standpoint. What makes sense? And you shouldn't just be theory heavy. You have to have practicality to back you up. You got to have your references in place. So the question that's come here is, there are numerous certifications out there. Are you planning to develop your own customized training and certification bodies? No, not necessarily a body, but programs that you want to run for small to medium businesses that are more affordable?
Yeah, I've actually had an organization approach me and ask, um, is this in the pipe? Whereas, employees can have a certification that they've achieved a certain point in their cybersecurity education and awareness. So that's definitely something that uh, I'm looking into. Um, what it means to have a certification body and whatnot. But that's definitely another area that we could definitely look into, because ultimately I see it as you know, it's another thing that as an employee, it's going to give you an edge if you're looking to grow your career or move to another organization, that if you can come in with cybersecurity experience from an employee perspective, or say maybe an in-house IT person, um, have that knowledge, and you know you're going to be less of a risk to the new organization if you
Makes
look at it
sense.
that way.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah,
Now we got about 10 minutes, and I want to explore the Netmechanics garage a little bit more. You sort of spoken about the oil change equivalent that you do, the rotation, the alignment, so on and so forth that you can do for organizations. But you've kind of shied away from the test beds that you run. Now, you're with the IoT in your hands can be from the Internet of Things to the Internet of Threats. You like to look at different test beds. You've done a lot of simulations yourself. What do you do in terms of creating environments? Do you create your own lab, your own sandboxes where you test vulnerabilities? What do you do to sort of add that extra cool factor and that mysterious factor to what your profession is?
yeah, I'm just starting to get back into it. For years, um, you know, I always had a server room
Yeah.
at home, to be able to break things and test things. And now I've just started redoing my space here at home. So I have it's a product called an Ansel.
Okay.
It's a virtual server, an Ansel one I think it's called, and basically it's a box that has no moving components. It's solid state. It's just the whole box is an aluminum
Yep.
heatsink. So there's no moving parts. So I don't have a constant hum and buzz in the background. So it can run several hundred virtual machines. So
Interesting.
that's what I use to bang and crunch away on different things. And the next step is the IoT devices to start breaking them. But it's the problem with the industry, if you want to call it a problem. For me, I'm always thirsty for information and knowledge, so that's why I love the industry. It's always evolving and changing, so I'm always learning. Um, so the lab it's essential to be able to break things and see how they work, and test out um, flaws and
And so on. Yeah.
vulnerabilities. Yep.
And I'll add to that. And again, the whole idea of the Career Expo is besides just magnifying the companies that we're talking to, it's also to give our listeners a lot of tips about it. It's not just, oh, here's a job, apply to it. It's about some of the things you need to be listening to, some things you want to add to your resume. And I go back to my own engagements with Graham, whether he's speaking at a conference or just attending, he's in it. It's there on my calendar to say, or his calendar rather, to say, for this week, for this day, I'm at this conference. Even if I'm not there physically, I'm there virtually. I'm at this conference. I'm going to be there, and I'm dedicated to that. So I'm not in the middle of the conference taking another call or planning a customer session. Professional development and learning and being dedicated to it. Not only does that help you, but you also get recognized by your peers around you. You also get recognized by the employers that are roaming around these forums that are there. They're seeing your level of engagement there. You have a presence, and that goes a very, very long way. One of my pet peeves is when I just see folks come to conferences, and sure, the socializing part is an element of it. But if you're always going to be on your phone doing work stuff, then you'd rather have been at work or rather just been at home. But if you're going to be at that conference, you need to dedicate yourself to it. And I think, Graham, you've been a signature of how to dedicate yourself to conferences for all of us here in Durham region. So thank you for what you do. Got a couple of more minutes, and I want to chime in on a few conversations that have been happening in the industry, and I think it's important to get your perspective. One of the challenges that a lot of companies face, small to medium especially, is on the vendor management side. Is your practice, and this is a question that's in as well, is your practice vendor and partner and process agnostic, or do you have your select vendors that you work with because they've proven tried and tested?
So from the technology perspective, I'm vendor agnostic. I don't side with any one vendor. Um, I have partnerships with other
Yep.
practitioners because they're specialists in their respective fields.
Yep.
So I have those vendor agreements and partnerships in place. But from a technology perspective, no, I stay vendor agnostic because um, I'm not going to say one product's better than the other. I'll just if I am asked to recommend, then I'll recommend a product or a series of products that will solve an issue for the business. I don't I don't implement anything, so I'm out of that loop. So I can't
Yeah.
recommend any one product for a special instance from an implementation point of view. So I tend to stay away from that.
And I think that's another important step, that if you are getting into this world of consulting, is that you need to know, well, you need to draw your lines on what is it that you will and won't do, what is it that you will recommend and not recommend, because at the end of the day, it does bleed into the integrity element. And once trust is established, you can take the client down a particular, the partner down a particular path. But without trust, it becomes a financial transaction that often may not yield the kind of results that we want. And I solely agree with this, that it's not just about, if an attack will happen or if a breach will happen. It's about when. And for a small to medium business to have that trust with you, that you've got their back in case something happens, which it might, it goes a very long way in helping that business sleep at night and conduct their operations. One last question for you, Graham, and this is on the aspect of the internationalization of cybersecurity, and really, how far are you planning to stretch yourself? You do a lot of work in Canada, but we do see you on international forums as well. How are you planning to scale and grow?
Um, that was part of the reason for building the platform. Actually, was to be able to disseminate my experience and way of doing things on a global scale. So um, I'd like to say I'm going to be like Pinky in the Brain and take over the world.
Yeah.
But at this point, right now, it's I have had offers from organizations in the U.S. to do partnerships and work on some projects down there. So that's on the radar. Also in the UK, and we'll see where things go. But part of the real driver behind the software was the platform was to make it a global education platform. So um, we'll need some legs under it to get there.
Fair enough. For the audience that's listening, if you're watching on cyberexchange.ca, all the sessions over the next 2 weeks will go on to the on-demand section. In the little ticker notes that are flying beneath you have Netmechanics contacts. You also have some important stats on the state of cybersecurity for small to medium businesses. I think it's really important that to your practice, if you're looking to get hired by a consulting firm, please reach out to Graham. He can guide you in that process. But if you're looking to start up how you can offer your services independently, but also in collaboration with other professionals, Netmechanics is a very good place to start. I think you can build your community around that. I really feel that with these gamification platforms, so on and so forth, you'd be surprised the kind of roles that emerge from it. With that, Graham, I am going to bring our session to a close and thank you for all of your time and for taking time from your busy schedule to engage with us. To our audience, there are a couple of things that I want to highlight here. Graham's probably told you a lot of things that you can think about. And one of the ones that I want to leave you with is this aspect of there isn't a finish line to the work that he's doing. They're just different mile markers. You keep going and you keep going. It's always a work in progress. It's good to realize that there's some things that you can say no to. There's some things that you want to hand over to other professionals, to other practitioners in the space, while you stay focused on the journey that you have planned ahead of you. I really like the name Netmechanics because it kind of gets you to think metaphorically about how we come in to a garage and how we explain our problems. And often the way we explain our problems can either help or deter completely in terms of understanding what's going on. But the minute you become a partner in that exchange with the mechanic and you talk about your experience, the more gets revealed, the more closer and quicker you get to how you want to solve the problem that you might be experiencing. So, for those of you looking to work in the world of cybersecurity, I hope this session was useful for you. But those who are also looking to engage on certain issues that you're facing, the emphasis on that communication piece, I really hope that that opened up some doors for you in terms of understanding. I say this all the time, dreams are not what put you to sleep, dreams are what don't let you sleep. There's some good things that don't let you sleep, and I'm looking forward to seeing the dream of this gamification platform, which I know is not letting Graeme sleep. I'm looking forward to it coming to life and being a part of that as well through Durham College and through our partnerships at the region of Durham. Graeme, thank you so much for your time, and I'll see you in the green room.
Great. Thank you very much.
Cheers.